Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Miss Smith Reads. I'm really excited to be on with you today to share a book that I think everyone's going to enjoy. So, without further ado, let's get ready to read. Our selection today is How the Cookie Crumbled, and it's written and illustrated by Gilbert Ford. It is the true and not so true stories of the invention of the chocolate chip cookie. I think they had me at cookie. Do these look familiar? Mmm, chocolate chip cookies. Ever wonder where these round, crispy, chocolatey pieces of perfection came from? Well, everyone knows that the chocolate chip cookie was invented by Ruth Wakefield. But how did she do it? Well, that's where the story gets messy. And I'm here to show you the some ways how it could have happened. So sit back, grab a cookie, and let me sweep away the crumbs. Ever since Ruth was old enough to hold a spoon, she was helping her grandmother in the kitchen. She carefully poured the scalloped cheese into a rum tummy ditty, and she'd measure with precision the flour and put it into her applesauce cakes. You see, to Ruth, cooking was a science, and the kitchen was her lab. So no one was surprised when Ruth went off to college to study nutrition. She took her passion and went on to college with it. After she finished school, Ruth went on to teach cooking and in high school. Although she enjoyed leading her classes, she hungered for something more. Then Ruth met Kenneth Wakefield. She shared her passion for cooking. He quickly became the apple of her eye. And it wasn't long before they were married and cooking up a plan to run their own restaurant. But their plans didn't fall into place until 4 years later. It was 1930, the beginning of the Great Depression. And with a young son in tow, it was not an ideal time to open up a restaurant. But when our lovebirds found an old toll house in Whitman, Massachusetts, they knew it was now or never. Looks like a pretty cool place. The toll house. Ruth and Kenneth scraped up their savings, signed on the dotted line, and fixed up the place and named it the Toll House Inn. Ruth didn't let hard times stop her from opening up her restaurant. She ran a tight ship, planning the menu and doing most of the cooking herself, while Kenneth ordered the food and helped out in the kitchen. Don't let hard times stop your plan. Ruth's staff said that she was a tough cookie to work for. She demanded the servers set the tables flawlessly, and she even measured the distance between the forks and the plates for accuracy. As dinner began to trickle in the Toll House Inn, Ruth's hard work sure paid off. She sent her customers home with full stomachs and a craving to come back for more. Looks like her hard work is paying off. Now, here's the part where Ruth invents the chocolate chip cookie. The trouble is, no one can agree on how she did it. So here are the three ways the story has been told. Let's see if you can recall the three ways. The first, the disaster. As one of the tales goes, it all began when Ruth was whipping up a batch of butter drop dew cookies. Her mixer was spinning like the dough like a tornado, and it knocked the Nestle chocolate bar off the shelf. and the chocolate fell into the mix. And wow, it was a disaster. But the grill man suggested that Ruth bake the cookies anyway. Ruth gave it a try. And when she pulled those cookies from the oven, she discovered they were pure heaven. The substitute. Ruth was in a hurry, and our talented chef had taken the order of baking the cookies. So she improvised by taking an ice pick to a Nestle chocolate bar. She thought that by sprinkling the chunks into the dough, the chocolate would melt evenly. But when she pulled the cookies from the oven, boy, was she wrong. They were ruined, she cried. And of course, someone else in the kitchen took a bite and said, wow. Well, when Ruth decided to try one, she agreed. So maybe it wasn't such a bad thing. The mastermind. While returning from a trip to Egypt, Ruth was pondering an old recipe when inspiration struck her. Ruth got back to her kitchen and went straight to work, mixing up the dough. Then she deliberately took an ice pick to that chocolate bar. Ruth dropped the chunks into the mix. And after the timer dinged, Ruth pulled the cookies from the oven and looked at her invention. It was exactly what she imagined. She shut her eyes, she took a bite, and she savored the warm, gooey chocolate as it melted right into her mouth. Oh, so good. So which version do you believe? The disaster? Although it's possible the candy bar fell straight into the dough, this tale seems a little half-baked. Or the substitute? Do you think that Ruth, who went to school and studied nutrition, didn't know how semi-sweet would melt when it was cooked? That's a little bit hard to swallow. But that's some food for thought. The mastermind. Is it possible that Ruth actually knew what she was doing? Anyone who knew Ruth would tell you she had a reputation for being an inventor, inventing delicious desserts at the Toll House Inn. And she traveled far and wide to find new recipes. So if you ask me, Ruth deserves some credit. She was the smart cookie. Now let's get back to the story. Ruth placed the cookies on a platter and took a deep breath. And she held them up high. Then she marched into the dining room and presented her dessert to the customers. The dinner pushed back their plates and reached for a cookie. So all the diners said, it's now time for dessert. Crunch, crunch, munch, munch. The cookies were a hit. Oh, look at all the happy, smiling faces. It looks like everyone's enjoying them. Word spread about Ruth's Toll House cookies, the chocolate crunch cookies, and folks drove from miles around to try some. So Ruth added more tables and expanded her restaurant. People begged Ruth for her recipe, and she didn't mind sharing it, not one bit. So she even sent it to a newspaper. Soon, everyone in Boston was baking Toll House cookies, crunch cookies. But it wasn't until Ruth was interviewed by Betty Crocker radio show that the word really spread. Now bakers all across the nation were talking about Ruth's cookies. So it sounds like the word is spreading. Meanwhile, the managers at the Nestle headquarters scratched their heads. What's the spike in the sales of our candy bars? When they discovered that the cause was Ruth's chocolate crunch cookies, They begged her for her recipe, and Ruth gave it to them. And Nestle began to produce chocolate chip cookies designed specifically for Ruth's cookies. And Ruth, so can you imagine that? They designed the Nestle chocolates just for her. Well, legend has it, she was awarded a lifetime supply of the Nestle chocolates. Oh, that sounds so good. By the 1940s, every grocery store in America carried the Toll House cookie recipe on each bag of Nestle chocolate chips. Wow. And from kitchen to kitchen across the country, cookies were baking. After a long time in her kitchen, Ruth was able to sit and enjoy the sweet taste of success. And all of that crunchy, gooey chocolate perfection, to the moon, it looks like a cookie. Well, I hope you enjoyed this story. I really did. How the Cookie Crumbled. Remember, it's by Gilbert. And remember, it's always time to read.